Hey everyone, just making a video here to go through some of the questions that were posted on the page. So well done everyone for the good start to the page. There's tons of activity, people are posting meals, and it doesn't matter if things are perfect just yet. We're drip feeding the information, so it's not just dumped on you at once, so things will become a little bit clearer. One of the questions was from Jackie Sinnott, who had asked about the recovery thing in phase 1 and phase 2. So some of you are probably familiar with our program and probably knew about the phases of recovery and stuff like that. So I have like a video and some information on recovery, which was due to go out on like day 5, but I'm just going to post that now as well, so you have that. So basically the phases are just essentially our recovery meals post-training. So the whole idea of training is you create damage and stress on the body that your body adapts to, and that adaptation occurs after training. So when you're sweating and you're doing your workout, you're not improving at all during that workout. You're not getting fitter, faster, stronger during. It's when you are finished up, you eat, you sleep, that's when all the regeneration happens. So we want to maximize that window post-training and try have 2 phases. So phase 1 is immediately post-training, which is going to be ideally a protein shake. Failing that, maybe a protein milk, and failing that, we also have like flavored milk options. So we want that to be a liquid meal, because if someone has a solid meal, you'll end up not having enough. Whereas if we split it into 2, like a liquid and a solid meal, we can maximize that protein intake. So phase 1, liquid protein, and then phase 2 is your next main meal. Next main meal should be a high protein meal, and also then that's when people are allowed have a higher carbohydrate meal. So you're essentially earning your carbs with exercise. So that's what we're trying to promote in general for the week, is that people are lower carb unless they're exercising. So we're limiting our high energy intake for when we need it, which is in that recovery window. So that's when you can have your oats, your potatoes, your rice, your quinoa, your couscous and so on. So then Anya Duffy asked the question, should you limit your fruit intake? So she asked a couple of questions. So the first one, should you limit your fruit intake? And this is a really interesting one, because this type of question comes up a lot. And there's a lot of bullshit out there, really, where people are telling people don't eat this fruit or whatever. And really, it's all crap. Fruit itself is a perfectly good food. It's full of vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. So overall, it's not a bad fruit. Now, there is sugar in fruit, fructose, which is slightly different than a normal table sugar, but at the end of the day, sugar is still sugar. So if you already have a high sugar intake, sugar from fruit can like tip you over the edge and be like a bad amount of sugar. But usually it's not sugar, it's not fruit that's made people be overweight or whatever. It's usually all of the other sugars on top of just being in a calorie surplus in general. So we definitely want to tackle sugar, and we can limit fruit intake to tackle that. But fruit usually isn't the main issue when it comes to sugar intake. So I would look to address all of the other sugars in someone's diet first. That could be, if someone's having fruit juice, that's going to be full of sugar. Now that's different because there's no fiber or anything involved. Like coconut water, like someone's having a latte in the morning with sugar, that can be a high sugar thing. We're snacking on bars and drinking fizzy drinks, all that sort of stuff. So I'd look to address all of that stuff first before worrying about fruit intake. Sometimes we will tell people to minimize fruit intake, and you can definitely overdo it. Like a smoothie is a great example of a healthy-ish meal, but if you're having like a banana, half an apple, and 2 bits of orange and some berries, that's the equivalent of having a can of Coke then in terms of sugar. So we can definitely go overboard on fruit. So we try and recommend 6 to 8 servings of fruit and veg a day, 6 being veg, 2 fruit essentially. So we want people eating more veg than fruit for sure. Then Anya's asked, are you only allowed 1 portion of carb on a workout day? So if someone is doing the full calorie challenge and is tracking everything, you've got a higher allowance for carbohydrates for sure. Our idea and plan is to put people into a calorie deficit. We want people eating high protein, and how we create that deficit is we reduce carbohydrates. Because people are always relying on carbs, it's a bit of a mental and physical challenge to pull out on that. So we want you to restrict those carbs until you've worked out. So earn your carbs through exercise essentially. So if you work out once a day, that's the meal you would have carbs in. So if I was going to have a steak dinner today on a non-training day, that might be steak, some carrot, kale and asparagus, say. Whereas if I've just worked out, that dinner will become steak, carrot, asparagus with some sweet potato. So you can kind of like plug and play your carbs when you need them. Then we had another question from Marion O'Neill. So any idea on how to ease sugar cravings? Don't get much sleep at night with the baby, so kind of rely on sugar in the day. Realistically, you have to tackle it head on. One step would be to replace your sugars with more beneficial sugars, which would be like moving to fruit. So instead of going for a chocolate bar, trying to go for some fruit or some grapes or something like that instead. That's one way. Another way is to try and go cold turkey with it and challenge yourself to avoid it altogether. And that might be a little bit more difficult. The other way would be to step 2 or 3 steps back, because you mentioned sleep, and figure out, right, well, if sleep is the underlying issue that's causing this, maybe that's the thing that needs to be addressed first. Now, obviously, having a young baby is probably going to be a big factor in that, but just seeing if you can maximize it where on the other side, like, can we get to bed earlier, or can you nap or do different things? So that might leave your energy in a better place. You're not craving sugars. I'll post up some good info on sleep during the week too, but really that's what I'd look to do, is try replace it with other things that are a little bit better for you, that give you maybe a little bit more nutrient value than just like pure sugar stuff. And yeah, that would be one, and tackling it head on. And then Orla Dillon has asked about making protein balls. So yummy. So we don't really know if large or small, depends on how big you make them. So what you'd have to do there is just either go off a recipe or just measure out what you're putting into it when you make them, and then stick to that recipe going forward. And then you can just divide all the numbers by however many balls you make, and then you know exactly what's in them. But protein balls are a great snack for sure. We highly recommend them. We have a couple of recipes for them ourselves, I think, somewhere. So maybe if you want to share your recipe, we can have a look at it. But generally speaking, as long as you can put some protein powder in, and to bring up the protein value of them, no issue with them in general.